Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à notre programme de la Boîte à souvenirs.
Hi everybody, welcome to our memory box.
Aujourd'hui, on va parler de musique.
Today's theme is music.
Fait qu'on a plusieurs belles choses à vous présenter, mais on va commencer par vous parler d'un couple renommé par rapport à notre histoire musicale ici à Moncton.
Yeah, before we get into the artifacts, we're going to talk about a couple and more so the wife in the couple in terms of the long-term effects. People that aren't from Moncton, but the influence on Moncton has been incredible.
C'est ça.
So the names are Maude and Arthur Burbank. I don't know if you've heard them before.
Burbanks.
You know, les Burbanks.
Oui.
So they started 1920s as a vaudeville act. And they started a little earlier than that. They're from New Hampshire, from the country.
D'accord.
And they said, we're going to make our break, we're going to Broadway.
Puis quand tu dis vaudeville, parce que ça c'est un terme que j'entendais avant, mais je n'étais pas certaine que ça voulait dire, mais c'est habituellement, c'est pas un gros groupe, c'est comme un couple ou 2-3 personnes qui font des performances, ça peut être du jonglage, des acrobaties ou de la musique,
That's right.
mais ça voyage.
That's right. So it's a smaller scale traveling show. So designed to be in smaller venues, not big, huge orchestra things. And the Capitol Theatre is actually a vaudeville theatre, which is why it's traditionally not as deep as some other larger sort of musical or orchestra-based performance venues. It was only designed for vaudeville acts, so it didn't need a big, deep stage. Yeah.
Ah, je savais pas ça! Le
Yeah.
Théâtre Capitol, il est plus petit à cause de ça, il était fait pour des spectacles vaudeville.
1920s, right? So,
Ah,
so this group, Maude and Arthur, got together in New Hampshire, and they started doing vaudeville. They started other things and decided it wasn't going to work out. So they thought vaudeville was the way to go. So they created a little vaudeville show where they played all of the instruments. And they traveled all across the US. They came through Canada. And in 1920, when they came to the Capitol Theatre, Fred Winter, that owned the Capitol Theatre, was so taken by their performance, he begged Maude and Arthur to stay and kind of take his small orchestra associated with the theater and kind of flesh it out and make it better.
il voulait qu'il reste à Moncton. Il venait d'ailleurs, puis il était comme ah, non, on vous a besoin ici dans la ville, ça ajoute la culture.
That's right.
C'est beau.
So it didn't work. They
Ah.
left. they went to Halifax, and he
Okay.
followed them,
vraiment?
begging them. Yeah. So his
Ah.
perseverance, they finally came back,
Okay.
and it was supposed to be for 6 months.
Mhm.
They loved it, and they stayed.
Ah, d'accord. Fait que
Yes.
finalement, ils ont décidé de
That's
rester
right.
à Moncton.
So they ran the orchestra and started teaching kids and ran some schools.
C'était un orchestre qui était géré par le Théâtre Capitol.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So Arthur dies, and they get into real estate. Like they kind of get into music completely. The money was in real estate instead of music. And Arthur was so busy with real estate that they stopped playing music. And Maude picked up, after many, many years, some of their brass instruments, started playing them, and said, "You know what? I've hit every note. I think I can still do this. Do you mind if I teach?"
Ah, elle voulait continuer. Elle voulait enseigner la musique.
That's right. So she started teaching. She created bands with kids, junior bands, beginner bands, that kind of thing. And even after Arthur passed away, she was renowned for creating 30 student junior bands competing against seniors and having judges from Britain say, "I haven't heard regimental bands in Britain play as well as that."
C'est impressionnant.
Yeah.
Maude Burbank.
She was a perfectionist, and the kids loved her. Some people from the outside thought she was very strict, but even the students, to make sure that everybody behaved, they created their own fine system while being her students. If you tooted your instrument, it was a nickel. If you spoke when you weren't supposed to, it was 10. She didn't come up with these rules, the students did. She had no children of her own, but the kids would come and mow her
C'était
lawn.
les enfants qui disaient ça, là, qui faisaient ces règlements-là. Si tu t'écoutais pas, ben là, faut que tu me donnes 5
Ces étudiants,
cents.
parmi les étudiants, yeah.
Wow.
So really, when young Queen Elizabeth and the Duke of Edinburgh came through by train,
En quelle année, là?
51,
OK.
I think.
Ils sont venus visiter?
Yeah, by train, and her group was supposed to play, and they did. She demanded a pavilion for them to play on at the train station. So the way she got her way, and they built the pavilion.
Bâti un pavillon pour ça.
And she remembers the Duke saying, "It's remarkable to see a woman leading a band and such a good band." So in the 50s to have a woman leading a band was remarkable to
Déjà
the
là,
Duke.
oui.
And then for the band of kids to be that good, pretty incredible. So she taught right up until the 50s. I think she passed away in the 60s, but so not from here, an expat from the States, but this was their home.
Ils ont eu une grosse influence et merci Fred du Théâtre Capitol pour ça, parce que là, ça fait partie de notre histoire.
Yeah.
On a une photo ici du couple qu'on va vous montrer aussi de plus proche. Puis je pense qu'il y a même des items.
Yeah, there's a tunic here that would have been worn for performances by Arthur. So this would have been what he...
Arthur portait ça.
That's right, yeah.
Pendant les vaudevilles.
That's right, yes. So you see brass in the pictures. They did predominantly brass, but she could play everything. And she taught the kids. They sat in a big room with their brass instruments, make buzzing noises at each other. Don't even try to play a note, just practice making noises. They grow from that to learning some piano, to learning some violin, all through her, yeah.
C'était pas juste des cuivres,
No.
c'était pas juste, c'était plusieurs différents instruments.
That's right. So back when there were the New Brunswick music festivals, she would bring her groups and the juniors would compete against the seniors and win quite often. Yeah.
C'est impressionnant.
Yeah. So those are the Burbanks, and so we're still talking about a time when there's really not a lot of radio play. Later on in her career, yes, but vaudeville was.
En direct. C'est
That's
des
right. Comme un
performances.
spectacle. Yeah,
oui,
yeah.
Tu vas au spectacle.
That's right.
Ça, c'était des comment dire, small scale, des petits spectacles.
That's right. Not to say there weren't big scale things. If you haven't heard of John Philip Sousa, John Philip Sousa is probably, if there was a rock star in.
Sousa?
So, if there was a rock star in the marching band music industry at the time, it was John Philip Sousa. And when he came to play at the Sunnybray Arena.
Oui, l'aréna, la patinoire Sunnybray.
That's right, yeah.
Spectacle, là?
Yes, in the summertime they have concerts, but when Philip Sousa came with his band, if you look at the proportion of how big the population was to how many people came to see a couple of sold out shows, there were as many people in the arena as standing in the marsh trying to hear Sousa playing.
C'est un vrai rock star.
Oh, you couldn't have picked a bigger person at the time to come and play in the marsh at the arena in Sunnybray. It was sort of marching band type music, so that was it. But back then it was huge in the 20s, and John Philip Sousa played to sold out audiences at the arena Sunnybray. Yeah.
Oh, c'est fun.
So now we get to start with a couple of more artifacts. The next person we're going to talk about is Bob White. So Bob White, born in Shediac, grew up in Amherst, but eventually, later in his career when he became a teacher, came to Moncton to start a music school.
Il s'est établi à Moncton pour ça, d'accord?
Yeah.
Pour une école de musique.
That's right. 1915 he's born, so he was an older gentleman.
D'accord.
From a musical family. 4.5 years old, he learns how to play the pump organ.
Ah, c'est jeune ça pour apprendre comment jouer l'orgue. 4 ans.
And a pump organ means you have to
Comme,
pump your feet while doing it, so you can picture a kid trying to touch the pedals of your parents' car, kind of while trying, yeah. And then by the time he's 8, he learns the accordion from his dad.
L'accordéon, d'accord.
And he got so good at it, within a year, he's performing with his dad at shows.
Tout jeune, tout jeune. Ben, c'est ça, une famille très musicale, ça de ses influences sur les enfants,
Yeah.
c'est sûr.
And then in his teens, he gets into stringed instruments.
Okay.
You know, guitars, violins, things like that. But they came across a family friend that played the banjo, and he was fascinated by this banjo. I've got to learn how to play the banjo now. He bought the only banjo he could find that had 4 strings.
Il aimait beaucoup le son du banjo, aussi comme le style, c'était comme un peu bluegrass, temps-là, ou?
It was country bluegrass,
okay,
yeah.
cool.
His whole career was pretty much country music, bluegrass,
Excellent.
old style country music.
Yeah.
But he wanted to play the 5-string banjo, but all he could find was a 4-string. So he built one. He learned how to build one. So he built himself a 5-string banjo to teach himself how to play.
Et c'est pas tout le monde qui peut construire un instrument, là. Il était pas luthier, là, par profession.
No.
Il était juste un musicien.
He's one of those, he's one of those people that I want this thing, and if I can't find it, I'm building it. Like, very resourceful kind of guy. So 1944, he starts a band called Bob White and the Canadian Playboys. It didn't have the same connotation back then, but and they played across the country. They played they played their style of music. They eventually played at places like Roy Thompson Hall in Toronto, places like that. Don Messer's show, Tommy Hunter. So he was actually pretty. He and his band were pretty well known in the country circles at the time.
C'est impressionnant. Puis j'ai entendu dire qu'il a même créé quelque chose de très spécial pour le musée. Pas pour le musée, désolé, mais il nous l'a offert pour notre collection pas longtemps.
That's right. So 67, he comes back and becomes a Monctonian, starts his school. His whole philosophy of school was the kids need to get their money's worth. So he really, really was attentive and honest, and really, it was more important for him that the students were well taught than about trying to make money. But he never lost his edge for wanting to build stuff.
Il est encore très créateur. C'est ça. On va vous montrer quelque chose de spécial.
So this is a recent donation. His, I think you could probably call it his masterpiece. is his double-necked banjo. So probably a tenor banjo, half of it, and then so two different sounds.
Yeah. T'as 6 cordes ici, puis là ici t'en as 4 ou 5. Ah, il y en a une.
The fifth one down here, yeah.
Wow.
So 2 different styles of banjo, and so it's his double-neck banjo, handmade by.
C'est impressionnant, là. Ça aurait été le fun de l'entendre jouer. Moi, j'étais pas là la journée. Le monsieur, j'étais pas là la journée qu'il a laissé ça c'était un don pour le musée, pour la collection.
I would never attempt to play that. It's an interesting instrument that I don't think I could ever make.
Il a pris la peine de tout le décorer. Il a plein de petits collants, puis toutes des petites couleurs. Ça fait un peu penser à la guitare de George Harrison, là, vers 60s, 70s.
Yeah, lots of inlay and everything. So a lot of work went into that. So we thank the family for thinking of us to donate that beautiful thing. So those are some people. I mean, people right away when we talk about these older musicians are going to talk about the Bunkhouse Boys. We didn't forget about them, but we will be doing one on possibly CKSW TV and Lionel TV. Oui. So we'll talk a lot about them there. They pretty much made the entertainment for those stations. So we will get to them. So to finish off, there's once you got away from live performances, you bought records. I mean, the original wax cylinder phonographs turn into vinyl ones, and we have a sample here of a turntable, a record player.
C'est ça, un tourne-disque de l'année, ça dit 1901. Fait que ça date de très longtemps, puis c'était pour jouer des vinyles. Fait que c'est un phonographe, comme qu'ils appellent.
And what's cool about this is you eventually get away from this. The next step up, that horn that amplifies the sound actually goes away, and then the speaker is sort of built in and compact. But
est-ce que, désolé, mais c'est parce que je vois il y a quelque chose ici. Est-ce qu'il fallait l'actionner?
Oh yeah, they weren't. Yeah,
ça, là, c'était pas
they were wound up. They were not electric yet, but because everything was by springs. Springs were quite advanced back then. It actually was quite precise timing. It's not like it just gradually got slower. Just the way that it was wound kept it pretty consistent. So you didn't get weird timings. Yeah, exactly. Switching from 33 to 3rd. Yeah. So beautifully decorated. I mean, that was a pretty, in your living room, that would be a pretty, or your salon would be a pretty important piece. So they were often decorated, beautiful floral motifs on that. And then you get the age of radio. And radios began commercially, or household ones. Like this one. This is a cathedral style, they call it.
Ah bah oui, le style, ça fait penser un peu gothique, comme une cathédrale.
That's right, yeah. So this one here, I believe, it's from 1936 or 37, based on the model. Okay. And it's tubes. So same thing with TVs. Kinda, yeah. He's saying to transmit those signals, which is why I say, I'm going to go watch the tube. Well, it's because there's tubes in there. So kids today don't, if you say, I'm going to record a record.
Ah, ils savent pas, ou comme une cassette.
Yeah.
As-tu tapé ça?
Yeah, as-tu tapé ça? Exactly. Well, hang up the phone.
Ah, ben oui, ça sera pas quelque chose qu'on
Why do you say hang up? I'm just putting it in my pocket.
Yeah.
Because you used to have to hang it up. Anyway, so this is, the tubes are still intact. So this would have been a Philco, I believe, radio. Big producer of cathedral radios, Philco.
Ça, c'est électrique.
Electric, yeah.
Ouais.
And then still tube, but now you're getting into the 1940s, so you're getting into different materials than the
Ouais.
wood. This is Bakelite.
C'est fait pour garder comme du bois.
Yeah,
on dirait,
so,
mais c'est
but-
pas ma plastique ou?
When you go from here to here, it's a form of plastic. It was
Mm-hmm.
Bakelite is what it was called. And then getting into the 50s, they stopped trying to look like wood and you get those cool reds and orange and
Oui.
yellows and stuff. Still the same material, Bakelite.
D'accord.
But still, there's 5 tubes in here.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks a little more modern, but still tube. And then something that I would have experience with, this is your old alarm clock radio, solid state, General Electric, solid state radio. And you think about that and what's on your phone right now.
Ouais, ben la différence, c'est flagrant, là. C'est comme jour et nuit.
Yeah. So your phone has your clock and your radio and your alarm and a TV and everything else,
Ouais.
but this was just your alarm clock radio with the snooze button and everything else.
C'est énorme pour avoir ces juste 2 fonctions-là, hein?
Yeah.
Juste pour te réveiller le matin puis écouter de la musique.
Yeah, and to tell time too.
Oui, ouais, c'est ça, il y avait l'heure.
But this was about 1973 or 4, I think.
Ah,
This one
ok.
came out.
Ben, ça ressemble beaucoup à la radio qu'il y avait dans le garage à mon grand-père. Fait que, tu sais, c'est quand même très familier, là.
Yeah, it would have. And you know, you say your grandfather's garage or his workshop, or when people upgraded, quite often the lower model ended up
Ah,
in
ouais,
the
ça,
workshop
c'est-
because you were less concerned about keeping it.
Dans la maison, c'était rendu plus, la technologie était plus avancée, puis ouais.
Which is why, and that's I'm just thinking of this now. As you say, when people are picking for antiques and stuff, the amount that they find in work sheds, tool sheds, garages, it's not necessarily because people just stored them there to get them out of the way. People would listen to that radio while doing work because the good radio was in the house.
Intéressant.
So you end up
Ouais.
with a lot of those. So sort of an evolution of sound and transmitting music from live vaudeville to solid state radios to Spotify
Ouais,
to your
c'est ça.
to
Ça
your phone.
évolue
So yeah.
beaucoup. Fait que voilà, hein, si vous avez des photos de vieilles radios ou même des comment on appelle, des phonographes, désolé, on peut les voir parce que c'est vraiment des bels objets puis on est curieux pour ça.
Old instruments, anything like that,
Oui,
especially
on a
if they're related to
tuba.
Moncton. Yeah.
Tu sais, je sais pas si tu connais quelqu'un qui joue au tuba.
Awesome.
Ce serait le fun.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Merci.
Every evening when the sun goes down,